All right, so let's do a quick discussion with the panelists. So Henderson, see if we can spotlight the four panelists and just get to know you folks. We haven't done an official introduction yet, so everyone here doesn't really know anyone except for Gary yet. So first, let's go just kind of the facts, your name, your company, what you do, but then check in with how are you feeling right now? What emotions on top for you? And a gratitude for a relationship you've developed with a coworker in your career. So a little specific there, but trying to connect it to this remote work environment and building a friendship. Coworker, or colleague, some peer, some professional connection that you've made and developed a friendship with over. So Kat, you want to go first?
Sure. So, hey, everybody, my name is Kat Vellos. I'm at weshouldgettogether.com, and my work is all about helping adults make and maintain healthy platonic relationships. So friendships in their life, whether that's friendships in your personal life or friendships in the workplace. And something I'm grateful for, was it something I'm grateful for or a relationship from work that I'm grateful for? What was it, Hansen?
A relationship specifically that you developed with a coworker.
Yeah. So I developed a friendship with a coworker at my last job. So prior to starting my company, I was a product designer at Slack, and I became friends with one of the other folks within the design team. And we basically bridged that friendship by taking the leap outside of the workplace to say, like, let's connect on the weekend. Let's talk about real life stuff, not just talk about work projects and things like that. And I think that's like one of the big keys to taking a workplace friendship into the rest of your life so that it can transcend your tenure at the company, is to like move it out of the workplace and make sure your conversations move into the realm of real life as well.
Thanks, Kat. Great to have you here. Charles?
My name is Charles Vogel, and I'm my own operation. I have a team, but we just do it under my name. And right now in my career, I'm known for having written several books on bringing people together in what we call community. And I advise organizations on leadership development, typically organizations that are working on high stakes challenges in dynamic environments. And I had a coworker who was very helpful when I had a medical emergency. And he was a former practicing physician and then went on to other things and was very, very supportive as I went through that. And it made a big difference for me. And Gary, I just want to say, go AFC Richmond. So.
You know.
Oh, Gary, you're up next then.
Oh, all right, cool. You all know my name is Gary. As I mentioned, I run a company called Breakthrough Play, where we use applied improvisation and other playful methods as a way to, help individuals and teams be more connected, work on people skills like communication, confidence, creativity, and whatnot. And as far as gratitude I have for a coworker, similar, to Charles, I work with someone, especially when my firstborn son came along. It was a shell shock, and to have that support, to be present as a father, and still be able to get things done. It's amazing.
Welcome, Gary. Great to have you here. Jenny?
Hey, everybody. My name is Jenny Sauer-Klein. I am the founder and CEO of the Scaling Intimacy School of Experience Design. So we take coaches, consultants, educators, internal organizational leaders, and we train them about how to do experience design and facilitation if people want to make their events more interactive, more engaging, to create dynamic learning experiences where the learning sticks and people are actually creating a sense of connection and community with each other. So that's what we do over here. And one of my favorite colleagues, I was introduced to her. So a number of years ago, I started a conference called the Culture Conference for Organizational Leaders. It was an invite-only event, and you could nominate people to be invited. And this one woman, Julia Winston, got like 8 invitations. I was like, who is this person? And fast forward, 5-6 years later, she's one of our senior leaders at my company and one of my dearest and closest and most beloved friends and colleagues. So it's just an amazing kind of where you get these hints from the universe that like you need to be connected to this person and they need to be close in your world, and how we keep them close in our lives. So Julia is someone I'm really grateful for as both a friend and a colleague.
Thank you, Jenny. And it's like they're all here with us. Love that. It's like we called their energy in to share this with us. So now I'm going to ask a question and give you a 1 minute response or so for each of you. We're here a lot for a big reason is because the Surgeon General came out with a report about the epidemic of loneliness and isolation. And it talks about how cultivating a culture of connection is the sixth pillar to advance social connection. And one way it suggests doing that is making social connection a strategic priority in the workplace at all levels, administration, management, down to all the employees. Now, assuming that's not already in place, like no one's feeling this super sense of belonging and connection in the workplace, especially the remote work environment, where do you recommend someone begins this work? What's that first step to take in this remote world? And for folks who haven't read the Surgeon General's report, I'm going to put it in the chat right after we hear our responses from the panelists. And Kat, would you like to go first on this one?
Yeah, I would, because what I like to remind people of is that you always have options. So obviously the most obvious place to first look is there someone within your immediate team that you already have regular access to on a regular basis, like you're in communication via Slack or Teams or whatever your team connection tools are remotely, because the people that you have the highest frequency and relative proximity to are the people that are going to be easier to build relationships with. That being said, there is a huge benefit to actually making your work friend 1 degree of separation away from you. And that the reason for that is that you're going to be less mired in the muck of the day-to-day, and it's a little bit easier to have conversations that just don't get mired in the day-to-day. And so those relationships can be a little bit stronger because they have a little bit more space around them. So that might be someone with your same job, but in a different department or pillar. It could be someone who's a part of an employee resource group that you're a part of. So I was a big part of like the queer employee resource group, the POC one, the women one. And so it could be someone who shares an identity with you, who also works at the company, but maybe they do something completely different. And then the next layer out would be somebody who shares your work in your industry, but actually works in a different company. And you might meet that person at a conference, at a trade association, at a workshop, something like that. And that can be a really resilient colleagueship too, because it doesn't depend on you both working in the same company. So you always have options. Those are 3. And you always have the power. Don't rely on a manager to give you your connections at work. It's in your own hands. And that's actually the place where you have the most control and freedom as well.
Thank you, Kat. What about you, Charles?
For the purpose of this conversation, I think one place to consider starting is consider that people both up and down in an organization are often very hungry for more connection. I think everybody on this panel who sees organizations knows that often the higher you go up in an organization, the more lonely the experience gets. And that is true all the way to the top, which is to say there could be more hunger for an invitation for a conversation that is not agenda driven than you know. And I have many examples where someone got brave and made an invitation and was shocked about how warm the reception was, because often when up invites down, that can be a foreboding experience for someone down. And so there's reticence to do that. My favorite experience is when I was in grad school, my next door neighbor invited the new dean of his department to dinner at my friend's home, which was next door to me. And the new dean at the department accepted. And what my friend discovered was the dean had moved there without his family because his family was still back in Chicago. And nobody at the entire university had invited the new dean out to share a meal that wasn't a work meal. So my friend's invitation was literally the only friendly invitation he got on the entire campus. And unfortunately, I don't think that's unusual.
Thank you, Charles. Gary?
Especially since we're talking about virtual environments, the importance of rituals and being intentional about rituals, that is going to, create that foundation for connection. So if we think about like when we were back in the office, we had a lot of things that we took for granted, like, the fact that we spontaneously maybe pass someone in the hallway and, we shared as simple as sharing a smile, and a hello. Those things create, they're like those meaning markers and moments that we often overlook. right before a meeting starts, when we are having, idle chit chat. Again, that's where we're finding commonalities. That's where we're getting what I like to call dose, which is dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. And in the virtual space, how can you be intentional and have rituals that are going to allow people to have moments that are adjacent from the work? Because yes, we're going to get the work done, but how can we, as Charles mentioned, and Kat as well, talk about stuff that is going to allow us to connect. And it can be, something as simple as, right before a meeting, doing just like what you did, Hansen, checking in with everyone, and having everyone just say, what is one emotion that you're feeling? If you have a larger group, it can be put in the chat. So that's what I got.
Thank you, Gary. And Jenny?
I'm going to piggyback off Gary because we're birds of a feather. Just this idea that, like in-person connection happens by serendipity, but online it doesn't happen unless we do it on purpose. And so I think a lot of people, especially leaders, might feel shy about creating a space for connection, or I don't know how to do that, or is it going to be cheesy, or are people going to be resistant to it? And so that often holds us back, or we've got to get to the real stuff, the content, the hard work, right? And it feels like we don't have time. So we get into this false dichotomy where we're choosing between content and connection. And the reality is that we can actually have both. And when you invoke even a few moments or minutes of connection, it actually helps your content land that much more deeply because people are awake, aware, receptive, present, they feel open. There's a space where we can be human, we can ask for help, we can ask questions, we can admit we don't know something.
We lost Jenny's audio. I think we may have lost you, Jenny. I don't know if you can still hear us. We lost your mic. It's just getting good. We can't hear you.
Stand up. Sorry, did my audio go out there?
Yep.
Yep.
And you're
Sorry about that. Okay. So just thinking about connecting often, even if those are micro moments of, like, as Gary said, a prompt in the chat, a small 5-minute breakout, those moments over time do build up and create a sense of connection and intimacy and trust and rapport. So rather than waiting for that once a year team offsite, you really want to think about in any moment where you have a group gathering, how do you insert micro moments of connection, and those build and accumulate over time.
Thank you all. Appreciate that. And I want to take that into a discussion with Charles and giving some background around your work, especially around the campfire circles and what that means, and how people can start thinking about this in their own meetings at work, especially remotely.
Yeah, well, in the brevity that we have here, for the purposes of pedagogy, I talk about what I call campfire experiences. And that's simply this idea that the connections that we want actually happen in intimate experiences. And I find this is an idea that's lost in our era when people are desperately lonely and people invest time and inevitably money to connect people. And they have this default assumption that if we want to bring a group together, what we should do is get everybody into the same place, be that a virtual room or literally a table. And that doesn't work because it means that we have to manage too many relationships in any given moment that precludes the intimate experience, the vulnerable conversations that actually develop relationships. So the campfire experience just points to this idea that we want to create campfire-like experiences for people, which is to say the experiences have 3 criteria. One is people are physically close enough, and in a virtual environment, that means a small enough room that they can have an intimate conversation, that they have the freedom to have the conversation they want as opposed to an agenda-driven conversation. And the third criteria is that all the conditions that would distract from that intimate conversation are handled or taken away. Loud music, someone selling raffle tickets regularly, that kind of thing. And when we recognize this, then when we do bring people together and we spend the time and the money to do so, we can notice where we're inviting our participants to have an experience that meets those criteria, that's intimate enough to possibly develop a relationship that's meaningful.
Thank you. I think many people in the room probably feel like that doesn't exist today for them in the remote meetings. And I'd love folks to reflect on kind of what they can start doing incrementally to make some changes. And the activity we have is what I call keep, stop, or not, I didn't create it, keep, stop, start exercise. I love it for giving some feedback or receiving feedback. But I want folks to think about what is one thing you see in your meetings or a recent meeting you were a part of that you want to keep doing, that you think the meeting host should stop doing, or what is one thing that we should start doing to foster better connection? And I would love for maybe two of the panelists to just give this, set an example of this conversation. Jenny, Charles, if you're up for it, about reflecting on a meeting you've seen recently or been a part of. What should be kept, what should be stopped, and what should be started to foster that connection?
I will jump in with some ideas. So one to keep, I found in our own meetings as we're preparing our team to go into facilitate events together. One thing that we've been doing is, just thinking about whether that's a moment of intention, grounding, arrival, like similar to what Gary was saying about rituals, like how do you ritualize transitioning from one space to another? So oftentimes we're in meetings back to back throughout the day, right? And there's no pause. And so just having a moment to actually physically, emotionally arrive at a place, and whether that's the box breathing like you led, Hansen, or just each person sharing a word of intention for why they're here in this moment. So I think that's something to keep doing that I think is really useful, and again can take 2 minutes to do, so it doesn't have to take a lot of time. One thing to stop doing in meetings is a lot of information dissemination, and I think that really turns people into passive observers, right? That's the part that people don't enjoy usually. And it's like, oh, this could have been better in an email or a Slack message or a video, right? How do we move some of that to asynchronous so that when we're in a live gathering or moment of connection together, that we can actually focus on collaborative problem solving, on asking questions, on having more of a community collaborative experience rather than just passive listening and receiving. And I think something that we can all start is just, again, kind of coming back to what we mentioned before, is those micro moments of connection. So how do you just allow people to share a little bit more of their humanity? And I think there are a lot of people who there's some people who really want to keep their personal and professional lives separate. And so how do we get those folks bought in, and how do we help those folks feel safe to bring a part of themselves, their personal lives and their humanity into the workspace? And one of the ways I found that to be useful is asking a question that bridges the personal and professional. So it might be, who's a mentor who has really helped you in your career, and how did they support your growth? Or what's one of your hopes or fears for your industry as we're rebounding from COVID? So thinking about ways that you can cross-pollinate personal and professional, so it has maybe a professional context, but a personal share, I think can help those people who are on the fence feel more comfortable to share more of themselves with their colleagues.
Thanks, Jenny. You got a plus 1,000 from Kat in the chat. Agreeing with you on that
Woohoo!
one. Charles, you want to add any keep, stop, start?
Well, similar to Jenny, I think the beginning of meetings is important. And I noticed one of the things going on in virtual experiences is loss of context. So one of the things I really like doing is inviting, in any kind of prompt that we want to use any given day, to invite participants to share what's going on in their lives other than the meeting. And in these conversations, I've learned that somebody was in the neighborhood that was burning down in Boulder, Colorado. I've learned that somebody else had violent riots going on near their home in Washington, which would have never come up if we hadn't provided them a moment to share what was going on in their area. And it, of course, changed our entire understanding of the work environment they were joining us in, because they shared, my neighborhood's burning down. So there you go. That's one. And then the stops. Stop pretending that collaborative conversations virtually in rooms bigger than 5 people is actually helpful. It's too many relationships to manage in a collaborative conversation, especially when we're losing a lot of the nonverbal cues about emotion and tenor. And I think a lot of time is wasted that way.
And do you see is 5 ideal, or is 5 too much?
No, 5, I mean, there's obviously a bell curve, because some people have different facilities of managing relationships, and there's different measure of trust and relatedness. But as a general rule, if you Google the Brooks lines of communication, You'll see a bunch of graphs showing how many lines of communication are going on between any set of people. And you'll see there's a pretty dramatic jump between 5 and 6. And the communication lines are actually half the relationships that are getting managed. And so it's just very burdensome for us to try to manage those and be collaborative, especially when we're in an environment where we're missing so much context, as I say, nonverbals.
Appreciate that. All right, folks, it is your turn to do the keep, stop, start exercise. We'll have the instructions posted in the chat. And Genesis, you ready to take us out into breakout rooms?
Yes, we're ready.
All right, let's go. You've got about 4 minutes or so and a little buffer time before we bring you back in. And go ahead and give some, a meeting that you've been connected to recently, whether you ran it or you were part of it, and just reflect on what you would have wanted to keep, what you wanted to stop, and what you want to start. All right, I see folks bouncing off to breakout rooms. Cool. We got Cecilia, you're still here with us. Rachel, you're here with us. If you can hear me, jump into your breakout rooms.
This is where we talk about the secret good stuff.
Yeah,
Secret
all the
good
secrets.
stuff.
Kimberly stayed for the secrets.
Kimberly.
Well, I came back because my room has a non-video, non-participant in it. Impulse note taker is not really participating. So
Thank you for coming back. Genesis, can we find Kimberly some new friends?
Yes, absolutely. She's on her way. And I'm taking Impulse Note Taker to the main room.
Okay, so I got a brain question for Gary.
Yeah.
Gary, did you tear the sign in half and then tape it together as a true fan?
I haven't yet.
Okay.
So this is from season 1. My wife made it for me. And
Aw.
I told her, I was like, do you mind if I do that? And she was like, I guess if you want. I haven't yet, but yeah.
Okay. She's not a
But no.
season 2 fan. She's a season 1 fan, which
Well,
I
no.
respect.
She's I worked very hard on this sign.
Okay.
Don't do your performative shit. With my hard
Did
work.
you explain
sort
that
of
you
thing.
would tape it back together and it would be a metaphor of healing?
Right? It is. It's a metaphor. So, anyways, but I have yet to do it. She's like, oh, do
need-
whatever you want then. Go ahead, do
You need
whatever
to
you want.
rip it live on some
Right?
like important moment with some team
Yeah.
thing. Where
I'm like, here we go.
We are stronger than paper.
Right?
Right.
This is
And then when they come back from the breakout, it's all done.
it's all taped back.
Yeah. You didn't make it a performance RP.
Yeah, there we go. What has
Is this
been
about
changed?
the believe sign?
Yes.
It
Oh.
references a very specific character in a very specific show.
It's from Ted Lasso. If you haven't seen it, there's like, it's like the soccer coach guy and it's the thing in the wall.
But it's the
like a whole-
metaphor for the team coming together, and then a
Yes.
particular character harms it, and then there's a storyline about it getting repaired and being
Repaired.
discovered, and it's like
Yes.
a thing.
That's the
If
thing.
you have separated yourself from TV for a long time, this is the only show you should come back for.
Season 1 and 2, season 3 jumped the shark a couple times.
Yeah. I know
I
they're
love
trying to
it. I
close
love
all
the
the
end.
gaps.
Really
Yeah,
love
a
it.
lot of shark jumping. I can't handle it. It's really disappointing.
So I'm going to skip the next question to save us some time. We're a little already, as expected, running behind. So Kat, we're going to jump right into your conversation talking about adult friendships.
Okay.
And I'll prompt them to share a little in the chat first when they're coming back in the room.
Yeah. I think the chat shares are really nice, and it's one of the
Yes, they
benefits
are.
of doing a virtual meeting instead of in person. Is like they can share concurrently with stuff going on.
Man, I'm so addicted to chat. I'm like, how do we do
No,
the chat is so good.
I love it.
Right?
So good, but then
In
also
my,
so distracting sometimes.
I know there are some people who really do find it distracting. I love it. And I love having the asynchronous conversations concurrently. But when I was leading a mastermind program last year with 18 people that was like part in person and part online. And I was like, how do I recreate the chat in person? So I bought everyone individual little whiteboards and gave them markers. There were times where I'd ask a question, I'd be like, write it on your whiteboard. And then everyone would hold it up. And that was like,
Nice.
I was experimenting. I was like, how do you get that
Cool.
same kind of instant feedback from the group at like a glance, it was an interesting experiment. I don't know that it works at scale, but with a small group, you can kind of
Yeah.
play with it.
That's
I was
cool.
really intrigued by the stat that you shared, Charles, about the 5 people in a remote room. In our discussion with Professor Dunbar, we had like an interview with Professor Dunbar, and he said that even if you get 5 people in person, they will split into 2 groups, which I found really intriguing. And then I see it all over, like in real life. He said as soon as it gets a bit intimate and the intimate questions start, they split into 2.
Yes, and this is one of the things that kills me, because I go into rooms where people who are unsophisticated are just filling big tables, and that's the worst. That's the worst. It's working against the aspiration. The other thing that kills me, which is going to sound ironic here, is not understanding the time math. So if you get 4 people in a room and say, I'm giving you 3 minutes to do something, it's not happening, right? Like the checkbox of small group isn't what makes it happen. The small group facilitates enough time per person to possibly have the intimate conversation that may lead to the emotional resonance. It's not just a checkbox, is my point. And so this is always a deeper conversation, because if you only get 1/3 of it, then you're just doing theater.
Yeah.
All right, welcome back, folks. As you're coming back in the room, I would love to hear maybe what is something that you may have learned from one of your new friends about that you want to apply to your meetings, any future meetings you're a part of. What do you want to keep, stop, start? Share in the chat. If anyone wants to come off mute, feel free, but put in the chat. What did you put for keep, stop, start? Especially what did you learn from someone else that you were chatting with? There's probably a lot to put in the chat.
I'll come off of mute. I just want to shout out to DeMario, who shared a strategy for humanizing meetings at the top, like a 5-minute check-in that humanizes meetings. And also he shared a tool, right? So I'm grateful for the suggestion and grateful for the tool as well. And just to give you some deeper insight, he talked about a 5-minute meditation at the top of every meeting as a way to humanize meetings before getting into the business of things, and also about the culture at his organization where they prioritize like human first. The work will always be there, but let's connect on a human level, which will help us connect in a more deeper way to the business. So thank you very much.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Summer. And thank you, DeMario. Amazing. Great to have you here. All right, we're gonna keep going in the chat. If you guys have things you definitely want to start doing in your next meetings. But next, we want to talk a little bit about adult friendships, something that I personally have struggled with, and it's something that I'm being super intentional about with in my life now. And I'm learning a lot from one of our panelists here, Kat Vellos, on adult friendships. And I'd love for you, Kat, to share a bit about your work and really in the context of adult friendships from afar too, in a remote work world. So give us a little background there.
Yeah. You know, it's harder to keep our friendships going when we are at a distance from each other. Same thing with our workplace colleagueships is what I typically refer to them there. Is like whether you're keeping it strictly business or whether you're blending, you know, your personal life and your work life together. These relationships are seriously impactful to our life, and the quality of those relationships impact our well-being mentally, emotionally, and physically as well. So one of the things I noticed that keeps people from developing those closer relationships at work, those friendships, is that they think they have to stick to the same 3 or 4 safe work topics that we've already talked about a million times, right? So I try to remind people that it is possible to have a more connecting conversation with people at work while still keeping it work appropriate, right? That's part of the reason I made the Better Conversations kit in my website, is like there's a whole year of different questions you can ask each other every day that get you closer but are still workplace appropriate. And the thing to remember with the way that we use questions with intention and with purpose is to acknowledge that they are a doorway to connection. When you ask a question, you enter a room, an energetic room with people where you can bloom that relationship. And the way that you grow it there is to say, what do you have the courage to ask a different kind of question or to ask a new question in a different way? And also how you answer questions. What you give the other person when they ask you a question, you have the opportunity to go deeper. So in the interest of time, I think that instead of doing the demo, Hansen, if that's okay with you, I'll just give like a brief example and then we'll give people the chance to practice this together in their breakouts. Is that all right with you?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Great. So the question I would love for you to explore with each other, and I'll give an example, is how do you intentionally cultivate and care for your friendships that don't live nearby? Because this is a very common experience. Most of us have a friend who has moved away or we have moved away. So how are you taking care of those friendships with those faraway friends, and what is working or not working? And I'll give some examples. So with my friends who really care about music, we do a collaborative playlist and we talk a lot about that. With my friends who really care about talking about the day-to-day in our relationships, we do a lot of phone calls and text messages. With a friend of mine who really loves discussing society and culture and thinks deeply about that, we actually trade a lot of YouTube videos and articles and podcasts back and forth with each other. So I'm circumstantially changing like what methods I'm using to keep those friendships going based on what I know about that person, right? So that's one thing that's working. What's not working is that time zones are really hard. And so we do a lot of this asynchronously, right? So that's a very short example. You're going to have about 4 or 5 minutes with your partners to discuss as well. How are you taking care of those long distance friendships? What's working and not working? I hope you have a good conversation.
Thank you, Kat. And let's jump back into our breakout rooms. This will be the last breakout, folks. And we got most of them in the breakouts. Or we got Dimitri here with us still. Cool. Thank you, Kat. I really appreciate you helping accelerate things there. That was
Sure.
That was professionally done.
Well, I know the time is a concern, and I want to make sure that we have time for a proper closing as well with Jenny. So hope that was enough to get them going. Hope they have a good chat. And
yeah, I appreciate it. I need to have this chat more too. I struggle with this. That's my running friends. It's one thing because it's always on top of mind for me because I see their runs, they're on Strava, I'm on Strava, and we can chat back and forth about their races, and that's one thing. But I don't have the shared playlist. I gotta find my music friends.
Yeah, I find it's easier to keep those conversations going and to keep the thread and momentum going when I tap into like what I know is really uniquely a passion for that friend. Yeah,
it was interesting when you said that, Kat. I was recognizing like I have a ongoing text chain with 2 of my good friends, so it's 3 of us. We all love like Afrobeat music, like there's specific genre, and we just send each other songs periodically, music video, like that's our jam. We jam on many levels, but that's one of our like core things. And it's so fun. Every, week or 2 weeks, you get a new song in your text chain. And I was like, oh yeah, that wasn't intentional in that way, but it does keep us connected even when we don't talk as much. And so it's just like, yeah, really honing in on what is that thing that you geek out about with that person or small group, and a way to keep that alive was like, oh yeah, that does totally work and is fun and doesn't feel effortful.
It's a ritual, right? But
Yeah.
It's like a just ongoing. Go ahead, Giannis or Gary, were you
No,
saying?
I was going to say that it just echoed with me as well, because I do it with a food group. So whenever someone is, because we have like a group where every one of us is cooking. I mean, we like cooking and barbecuing. So whenever one is in the kitchen, he starts like on WhatsApp sending what he's cooking, and everyone chimes in with like recommendations and what they had. And it's like we keep it alive all the time. And then every now and then we get together and we all cook together for our wives and a big bunch of people that are fans of those evenings. It's something we're obsessed about, and we share a lot of info.
Nice.
I don't know how easily it works with technology, but yeah, we do it on WhatsApp.
That's really cool, sharing those like food moments. And then of course it like makes everybody's appetite grow to actually get together and share a meal at some point when you can. Yeah, that reminded me, Giannis, that I also with some of my friends that are really like artsy craftsy with me, like we talk less frequently, but we send each other more special things, and we do snail mail with each other where we like make our own envelopes and like make our own paper and like send each other little art supplies. And it's this really sweet way to like share the connection over time, but also express this thing that we really care about, which is being creative and making things and gifting them to each other.
And then you snail mail what you make between the group?
No, this is like with
Or-
individual friends. Yeah.
Oh,
Not a
without-
group, but like, yeah, one-on-one. Like even with one friend, we had for several years, we had a journal that we would mail back and forth, like a sketchbook, and we would write in it and put art in it and then just mail it back and forth. Mhm.
Nice.
Got a lot of growth to do in this area. I don't know. I guess the sketchbook's the advanced level, right? Advanced friendship level.
Yeah, do what works for you. Maybe you're just gonna like send your friends a new pair of laces for their running shoes, and they'll
Right.
think of you every time they go for a run. I don't know.
Love that.
Start
Okay,
simple.
thank you.
Have you guys
let's-
experimented with the metaverse idea for work? Has any one of you?
You mean like the VR
I-
meetings?
Yeah, like meetings over VR.
I did facilitate a team building event in VR at the end of last year, and it was really cool. Interesting.
Was it?
Yeah, it was cool. I think it's totally possible. I'm a believer. I'm not
I
saying
wanna
that it
hear
should
about that.
replace
Yeah.
anything, but it was a VR company, so it was kind of like in their ethos. And it was super fun. We had a really powerful hour of like avatars connecting in VR. For whatever that's worth, you know what I mean? All in context, of course, but I think it's possible.
But Jen, is there a connection? If you're avatar with avatar, do you feel like, I mean, I've been in VR many times, but I've never tried to
I think
really
it's
bond.
I think it's all about intention. I think I did commonalities with them. Like, you know, we did connection exercises. It was a team building event. And so that was the whole intention.
Welcome back, folks. I hope you got to enjoy your final breakout with your new friends. If there was something fun that you wanted to share that you're doing to cultivate your friendships, especially from afar, throw it in the chat pane. Would love to hear some new ideas and potentially steal some ideas so I can improve my own friendships from afar. Thanks to the suggestion, I'm going to start sending running shoelaces, I guess, to my friends that run in different states. We're going to jump into a conversation with Jenny, talking about, you know, really how do you keep this intimacy, but for much larger groups? How do you maintain that, especially if you work at a company with thousands of employees? What do you do?
Yeah. So a couple quick ideas, some that I mentioned earlier, but we have a handful of keys to connection that are really helpful for when you're thinking about how you want to scale connection, especially with a bigger group. So the first one is connect early. We did that today with our prompt chat, and we went right into a breakout pretty quickly there with the commonalities that Gary led us through. So when you have these moments, opportunities with a group, how do you connect early right off the bat? And that sets the tone for everything to come. We talked about connecting often. So those moments of connection don't necessarily need to be long or half of your meeting, but having those micro moments that build over time really does help people to feel like there's a web of connection that's holding them rather than a once a year moment where it's like, now be vulnerable. And the third principle is gradually increase vulnerability, right? So if we push too far too fast, if we ask people to reveal too much too soon, then we get the opposite effect and people close. So the reality is that most of us are walking around with a certain amount of armor day to day from past hurts, traumas, things that have happened to us. So how do we support people in gently and gradually de-armoring themselves to create a psychologically safe space for them to share a little bit more about who they are and what's important to them and what's going on in their lives? So that's gradually increase vulnerability so that we have multiple touch points where we're opening a little bit more each time. And then the fourth one I'll share is to either go, there's two different kind of approaches. One is a narrow and deep approach, and one is a wide and shallow approach. So if you're in a big group, a group of strangers, people who are meeting for the first time, you don't have a lot of time, wide and shallow can be really good to just establish that web. So thinking about making many points of contact that are going to be small. And then the narrow and deep is really good if you have an intact team or you're meeting over the course of a year. We even did that today where we did a narrow and deep, whereas Hansen, you had us meet in the same groups in the course of an hour. So that, again, we're building that trust and rapport in micro moments every time we get together. So those are 4 principles that you can think about: connect early, connect often, gradually increase vulnerability, and then having a balance between both wide and shallow strategy for connection and a narrow and deep strategy for connection, just as you have experienced here today.
Thank you, Jenny. I've learned a ton from you, and I appreciate when I'm attending your own workshops. I've definitely felt that, and it's gotten me excited to learn how to do that myself. So appreciate it. Appreciate everyone being here today. I know we're at the end. We have one last activity. I'd love for everyone to share a closing gratitude for a new connection you made today. And while we're doing that, Hannah says maybe we can launch this poll. Kevin, I saw your question about keeping connected with the folks. That people can opt into that if they want to stay connected. Go ahead and answer this poll. Would you like to keep connected with the folks that are passionate about this topic? Absolutely. Yes, maybe, no thank you, all good, whatever your response is. And we'll try to introduce folks at a later date. But then in the chat, please share a gratitude for a new connection you made today. And that'll be our closing ritual. And maybe the panelists, I would love for you to exemplify. I know I'm grateful for all four of you. All three of you are new connections, and it's really amazing to be here with you and learn more about you, learn from you. So thank you. Gary, you want to go next? Do you want to share out loud?
Yeah, I'm just grateful to be around, such passionate folks like you all. You know what they say, you're the average of the people you surround yourself with. So I'm leaving feeling energized. And I just met two of you for the first time virtually. So this is awesome.
Thank you, Gary. Kat?
I really appreciate this opportunity to connect with you all, to learn, to be in community, to continue to be champions for best practices and connection, and hopefully send these ripples of connection out in the lives of everyone who attended here, and then the lives of everyone who attended here connects with the other people, and then they ripple it out too. So thank you for setting this up and inviting us, Hansen.
Thank you so much, Kat. Charles?
Well, I'm aware we're living in the loneliest era probably of people history, with very, very dire consequences. So I'm grateful that there are people who want to get better at bringing people together and show up to learn what you can learn.
Thank you, Charles. Last but not least, Jenny?
I'm grateful to connect with connectors. I think we need each other, right? It can even be lonely as a person who is spearheading connection. So I'm always grateful for that. And I'm grateful for the ideas that I heard today that were different from some of the ones that I tend to carry, and to expand my thinking on ways that we can connect that are outside of my normal realm. So thank you for inspiring me to learn more.
Jenny, and I didn't forget Giannis as well. You're not spotlighted. Maybe Hannah says we could spotlight Giannis so he can say a gratitude as well.
Yeah, I'm very thankful for this talk. I love seeing so many people with the same passion of connecting others, and doing so in such an open way. So I'd like to thank you all for doing this, and thank all the participants for being so open about going out in breakout rooms and interacting with the video. And I know it's not very common, but thank you all for doing this, and thank you, Hansen, for organizing.
Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate you. Have a wonderful rest of your day. I'll probably hang out in the chat here for a little longer, but I know a lot of folks got to jump to the next meeting. Hopefully the next meeting could be more connected, and have a wonderful day and week. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Hannah just nails it with the exit song too. Kevin, did you notice how much I brought your gratitude work into play today?
Absolutely, Hansen, loved it. You know, the thing I've just marveled in my work is how quickly and deeply gratitude allows people to connect.
Absolutely.
It's such a great opening exercise. And I'm just delighted to have benefited from the conversation and the exercises and the energy. So thanks.
Sarah, what did you think?
I had a great time. I wish we had more time together. I learned a lot.
Full transparency, folks. I know Sarah because she's my girlfriend, but the reason I met her was through Gary, who ran a workshop here in San Diego through Culture First. And Sarah was the presenter. She was teaching about compassion. Now I wear her shirts on. Yeah, pretty powerful connection story there.
Could you wear the shirt if you weren't dating?
Yes. she didn't realize we were dating for a while because I was passionate about compassion at her nonprofit. And I was taking things cautiously there because I really love the work she does. And turns out I fell in love with her too. So pretty excited about that.
Wait.
Genesis, you crushed it today. You wowed me like the whole time. I was like, how did you just do that? It was
See, I told you. I'm like,
Thank you.
call these people. They're amazing.
She's
Highly
amazing.
Highly recommend
Thank
all
you.
the
I'm
Nerea
super
Tech
happy
team.
to help.
Yeah.
Thank you. Super happy to help.
really great. So, and thank you all for being flexible with running over time and doing some accelerated portions there. I know I get a little ambitious with my outlines. So.
Don't we all? I think that the
I cut
timing
the
worked
other.
out pretty well, though. I mean,
Yeah.
you didn't have to
It
cut
did.
anything significant. So that's impressive.
Nailed
Pulled
it.
it off.
Yeah.
I will follow up with each one of you directly. Thank you so much for being here today. Appreciate you so much. And it's
Yeah.
been really a pleasure starting to get to know many of you who this is the first time we've collaborated or worked together, and it's just been super. I'm absorbing so much, and I love this work. So I hope to keep doing it.
Thank you. Thanks, Hansen. Thanks,
Yeah.
Giannis, for
Thank you.
hosting.
Yeah, it
Thanks,
was lovely to
Hansen.
meet you
Thanks,
guys. I hope we
Yeah.
get a chance to collaborate again. I mean,
Yeah.
I love the passion about connecting people. I think we underestimate how important an issue it's been. I know in the US, it's great to see the US highlighting it so much. It's not as highlighted as it should be, like in Europe. I think, and in many busy cities in Europe, we do get it. I think people are becoming much more aware of it in the US. I don't know, Gary, if that's I mean, you were in Vienna, you said. I don't know how, I mean, in your opinion, if it's also in Europe, but I love the fact that there's so much awareness and action to actually mitigate the risk of it.
Yeah, this is just one little piece. Hopefully we're gonna keep going. All right, have a wonderful day, folks. We'll talk soon.
Thanks,
Take
everybody.
care.
Bye,
Thank
y'all.
you, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.